Welcome back, my beautiful listeners. I am so excited that you are here with us. I know I've been gone for a hot minute. Life just got crazy, unexpected things kept popping up, and none of that matters because you know what? We're here. We're back in the groove. I have a lineup of phenomenal guests. I'm so excited for you guys to hear every single episode that we have been recording in the last little bit. And today, our guest is Jes Richardson. I am so excited. I'm over the moon. I mean, Jes is extraordinary in every sense of the word. She is just a phenomenal human being. Honestly, I can't say enough good things about her. Her husband, Reed, and we just bonded like mad crazy on Clubhouse, and I feel like we've been inseparable ever since. And so just a few little things about Jes. So Jes was sex trafficked, and she was also a sex worker. And she has 20 plus years of transforming leadership. She's a mother of 5. She is an author. Her book, Everything I Know I Learned from My Pimp, is phenomenal. I know I have it in all available formats. I've watched her read it. I've listened to her read it, and I've seen the book. It's so phenomenal. She's also been a guest lecturer at Yale University, and she has trained thousands of healthcare professionals, first responders, students, and communities. I mean, this woman is a wealth of knowledge, and today's episode was just a drop in the bucket. It was a drop in the ocean of her extraordinary, intense, lived experience and her wisdom. I'm so excited. She's going to come back on, and I just can't wait for you guys to meet her. So this one is coming in hot. It's coming in fast. There might be some triggers for some of you out there. I just want to let everybody know that because we talk quite brazenly about Jes's experiences and my experiences always. I'm open about my stuff too. So hang on to your pants because this one is a gooder. This episode is supported by Spa True Clinics. Spa True Clinics is my go-to for all things self-love, self-care, and confidence. Not only do they have a monthly special on multiple services, like every month, you guys, every month they're offering phenomenal things like laser hair removal, cool sculpting, facials, injectables, all of it. But they also have this thing called a VIP card, which, as I mentioned, I just turned 39, and I've been taking advantage of it. I was gifted, comes with a VIP card, you guys, a signature package, and it was complimentary. It was so amazing. I went in for 2 hours, an hour facial and an hour Swedish massage. And you guys, it was addicting. I'm going back every month for one. It was so great. So I want you guys to take full advantage of this offer. I want you guys to get on www.spatrue.com. Go check them out. Book in today. Every single month, sign up for their email list, and they will send you an email that tells you about all their incredible, amazing specials, or jump on their Instagram. Check them out, Spa, S-P-A, True, T-R-U, Clinics on Instagram. They share everything there as well. They're so professional. They care so much. Dr. Stephen Jones is just my absolute favorite doctor in the world. He's so cool. And Mike, who owns the clinic with Dr. Stephen Jones, I mean, they just do such an outstanding job. I can't get enough of them. I go back every month. I've become such a spa junkie in my old age. Anyways, you guys, we're going to get right into this episode. I'm so excited. Without further ado, Fellow Hollow, one of my favorite bands in the world, is going to take us into this episode with Jes Richardson. Good morning, wifey.
Good morning. It is so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? We should have done this way, way sooner. I mean, it's been a hot minute since I've recorded a podcast episode because quite frankly, between life and expenses and Clubhouse, like I just felt all talked out.
I get that. There was a lot of talking and I took a break this last week myself. So that feels good.
Right? It does feel good. So for our listeners out there, beautiful listeners, Jes and I met on Clubhouse. I can't even, what was it, like 2 months ago now? It had to have been 2 months ago.
I believe so. It was January when I hopped on and you were one of my first connections. It was so fun.
It was so fun. And I mean, it's only been a few months and yet it feels like an eternity.
A match made in heaven. There's just so many similarities and
so many.
God, the laughter is just amazing. I needed more friends that understood the complexities of trauma and laughter, and that has been fun.
I think that has been for me too one of the best things about our friendship is that, you know, we've had so many similar instances, you know, throughout our past and experiences. And, you know, but on top of that, it's the ways in which we chose to heal ourselves and the ways in which that we chose to confront our past and to work through it. And our laughter, like our ability to maintain, like, to be so joyful throughout the whole process. I mean, even when, you know, quite frankly, just snot sobbing on, you know, a bathroom floor in a closet room. And at the same time, being able to come out of it and point fingers at ourselves and just, you know, trauma room jokers, right? It's so inappropriate. Right. And yet at the same time, so necessary, so needed. And just like, I'm in awe of you all the time. And I love it. So yeah.
Wait, for me, thank you. And I feel the same way about you. Like it's like, what's the point of healing if you don't get these badass stories and like the best jokes on the other side? to me, like it just would feel like kind of pointless because it's not fun to work through your shit. It's a lot easier in a lot of ways. I probably could have made my life easier and like had not as much impact, not done as many fun things, not done the things that I wanted to do. But you truly can just compartmentalize everything, put it away and just stuff it and live in a box and go. That just wasn't necessarily an option for me. And I wanted to do something different. And so laughter just seemed to be, it made all of the pain make sense. It made it worthwhile because like I get jokes that no one else gets. I get to joke about whores and trafficking and slavery and like who gets those jokes? Like me. And I love that.
I get those jokes.
Right. That's mine and yours and anyone else. Yes. But that's the perk of being on that journey to really going deep and choosing yourself.
Yeah. I remember, you know, when we first met, we were laughing or whatever. And, you know, we were taking it back. And I think one of the things that you and I share, is just this deep love, this deep passion for our history, not just like our personal history, but the history of mankind. And to say mankind, I mean womankind. And, you know, like when people start talking about how, you know, how are we going to fix sex trafficking and how we're going to fix prostitution and how we're going to fix human trafficking, like you and I are, it's like, I feel like we're holding hands as we bang our head against the wall going, well, let's have a little conversation about the ultimate beginnings of like womankind and mankind. And let's talk about where this stems from.
History is ugly though. Okay, so my favorite quote is the only thing we learn from history is that we never learn from history. And in our household, it was about 14, 15 years ago, we made like this general guideline that violence is not entertainment. And it's because there's so much violence like in the world and in my life. I was like, it's just not fun to sit and watch someone's head get blown off. But history is history. And so like just studying history, we consume so much violence. Like you can't look at history and not see war and famine and genocide, and like it's nothing but injustice on every continent for every millennia for all of time. And we've never seen a time, humanity has never seen a time when all people were created equal. And so I think we're looking at all these, like trafficking is like a fruit issue. So like if the whole world were like a tree, all of us, these are issues that are the result of other things. And we see those other things when we look at history, and we see the history of women, and we see the history of every different nationality, because if you follow any of the lines back, there is genocide in all of them. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's like, what about the fucking solutions? Like the real answer has to come back to us, because true change comes from the inside out.
Yes.
And when that change happens, it happened in the depth of my soul. And then it grew outside of me, and my body started to change. And then my marriage and my children started to change. Like it oozes like this life force of human badassery. Because that change, it inspires and it encourages, and it lifts the people up around you, and it grows into the community. And that's really, I just think people need to have better sex and more fun. Like that's the moral of this story. We need more better sex and lots of fun.
Oh my God,
because if we did that would be that's fulfillment.
Yes, I love that. That's fulfillment. Mm-hmm.
That's really, I think, what everyone's searching for. They're just living up to the highest standard of themselves that they have in their own brain. So when you change that standard in your brain, it changes everything else. Like, because that's an inside change that oozes to the outside, and suddenly everything around you starts changing. And if you do those little steps, baby steps over time, it's unreal what you can accomplish, and how solid you feel, and how much you really can laugh at.
Well, I think too, a lot of people, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like for yourself and myself, I mean, one of my biggest issues when I exited trafficking was that I did not want to be a stigma. And there was so many societal expectations, and there were so many expectations within my family that were set, that I ultimately, upon first exiting, I really boxed myself in an effort to conform, right, to societal standards. And all it did was make me crazier. And all it did was actually, it ebbed. It didn't ebb the flow. It staunched the flow. It actually created this buildup of emotions inside of me that were just dying to get out, and without any answers, because I didn't have any answers, because I didn't have any questions, right? And I didn't have any questions because I was too busy trying to conform. And so what that led to was just a shit ton of inner turmoil and inner pain and self-rejection. And, when I finally decided to kind of look a little bit beyond what was being told I should do, and looking beyond who I was told I needed to be, that was when I began to be like, oh, maybe I need to question the people around me and start living a little bit truer to myself, and find relief where I can in the areas of my life that give me, like you said, that fulfillment, right? And then start building these identities. How is that for you?
Well, first, I've got to address, I had 2 exits. And so where I got to stop there for a second, because my exit from trafficking was different than my exit from the sex industry. And they're very different, because so I was, just to give a little bit of backstory, super
let's fast. Let's give all the backstory, Jess. Like, story is magnificent. Let's give all the backstory.
Okay, you ready for this?
Hell yeah, I'm always ready for this.
I do this in bullet pointed style. I ask you ready for this because it's kind of like a machine gun. It's like, hold on to your britches. We're going on a ride. My parents were both severely abused. My dad was the oldest of 10, and my grandfather got all 3 of his daughters pregnant. My mother was literally the hated stepchild. and she had me. And so I wasn't exactly, high on the totem pole. But when my parents found out they were pregnant in the 70s, they actually drove to Paradise, California, so I could say for the rest of my life that I was born in paradise. It was pretty remarkable that I made it out of the 70s with a name like Jessica, because it could have been like Lily Flower or something like that. Not that I'm against Lily Flower, but I like my name. So, and I just want to give the audience, please laugh. If you find something that I've been through ironic and incredibly fucked up, you have full permission to just laugh, because I do. And yes, it was coping at one point, but it's also freedom. Because we've all done fucked up things on our journeys. I've put myself in fucked up situations. I've been tricked into fucked up situations. My mom used to say, Jess, you're the only person I know that can jump in a bucket of shit and come out smelling like roses. Right? Exactly. Why I keep jumping in buckets of shit, I don't know. But I've gotten better. I don't jump in quite as large buckets of shit anymore. And that I'm proud of. So I said all that to be like, my parents really wanted me, but they had no fucking clue how to deal with anything. So because it's the 80s and the internet isn't invented yet, they don't have access to the knowledge that we have now. And if we're going to go back and study history, quite frankly, counseling and mental health was only invented in the early 1900s. Yet trauma and war and tragedy has been going on for millennia. So we've been dealing with these types of things for a long time. Complex trauma has always existed. And yet we're just new to this new box called mental health, called counseling. And really what I have discovered time and time again over my last 20 years of healing and working with other people is that people are timeless. And what worked then, many ways works now. You just apply some new methods for this new world of technology. But I ended up having sex with my neighbors when I was 4 and 5 years old. And I didn't use the word rape because it really, I didn't know what rape was. And I had orgasms. And I didn't know that that was wrong because no one ever told me that I shouldn't be riding a dick at 5 years old. And so, right, it's fucked up, right? So yeah, it's totally rape. I also want to point out that they were 13, 15, and 19 years old. Someone showed them, quote unquote, love in the same way they were showing me, quote unquote, love. And those cycles continue. So many times what we see is peer-based abuse. It is not the creepy old guy in the white, van with all the windows blocked out. It is our neighbors. It's the people around us. A lot of times it's other children.
Exactly.
And so we have to educate our children differently. I should also point out that I have 5 kids, and talking to your kids about these things is so important, like consent and body autonomy. They're absolutely critical. So we move away when I'm 5 years old, and I didn't even know that anything, we just moved. And those experiences didn't even hit me till much later. So when I was 10, my dad was killed in a homicide-suicide. And the young man who killed him was also 17. And I just want to point out that it's probably a 17-year-old in his totally healthy right mind that he doesn't just wake up one day and go, geez, I think I'm going to kill someone today. These, again, are cycles that if we're not teaching our young people how to overcome, how to deal with these things, how to resolve conflict, these blowouts are going to happen because the hormones of youth, God, I was fucking batshit crazy. And it was because they didn't know how to handle the hormones and the trauma, and using that, this harsh love, these ultimatums just doesn't work. Which with my dad gone, my mom ended up remarrying. I started just doing drugs, partying, sneaking out, the whole 9 yards. And I left home at 14. I ended up being raped into a gang when I was 16. And for this, I was actually really, really grateful because one, I learned how to steal really well. And that is a badass tool. Like, let's just admit it. When you can just steal shit. Right. That was super handy skill to pick up. I also learned how to sell rock cocaine, which was really cool too, because it was the reason why I never got into like meth or heroin. And it was because I was 16, young, blonde and blue, kind of like traumatized, being like the only white girl in like a 3-4 block area. The cops wouldn't even come down the street I worked on. And so, you know, I'm out on the corner clucking, and my clients who are buying this rock, they're like, you know, they say they're 26, but they look like they're 182 because that's just kind of what the drug does. That's how, like, it's just, it is what it is. And I was like, fuck, I don't want that. So I just didn't. And that was like a huge saving grace. So one day I watched one of my main dealers get his head blow off, and I just don't even miss a beat. I'm just like, I'm probably got a target on me and should leave. And so that nonchalant, it was just
like
so
taking
chill.
it in stride. You're just like, my whole life has been chaos. This is just a redirection. Right. Okay, thank you, universe. Got it. Exit plan left.
Right. Like, you just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And like, people are like, they tell me all the time, they're like, your life, I can't imagine. It's like, yeah, because you didn't fucking live it. If you live it, I lived my life just like you lived yours. And just like every other person is living their life. It's one day at a time. You just go one day to the next day to the next day. And if you're used to living in fucking shitstorm chaos trauma,
yes,
then it's not any different. If you're used to living in a suburban, if you would have put me in a white suburban neighborhood, I would have been like, the fuck is this place? Like,
you would have felt like you were going insane, like a cat on a hot tin roof, really, you know, because it wouldn't have been like it wasn't your natural environment. Your natural environment, you were hardwired for chaos, right?
Right. Always. And that, it just it wouldn't have made sense to me. But, so I end up leaving. Like, I ran away, ended up, you know, sinking into my privilege, that chameleon. Maybe I'm a Gemini, maybe it's a white thing. I don't know. I just have the ability to hide really well. And so I just ran away, ended up getting a job, and was waitressing. And this guy started coming in one day, and he was just amazing. Like, he listened to me. He heard me in every conceivable way. It was like so beautiful, because I, for the first time ever, felt heard and loved and acknowledged. And I had this problem because I was still 17, and my mom wouldn't emancipate me. So in the States, like, you are owned by your parents until you turn 18, unless they emancipate you, which is basically they give you adult freedom. My mom wouldn't do that because she was kind of being a controlling bitch at the time. We fixed our relationship, and my mom ended up being my best friend. But at the time, she was a bitch. Let's just get that shit straight. We've broken some generational cycles. And my mom actually passed away 2 months after I went public with my story. But we had completely healed our relationship and used to joke the same way you and I do. Oh. So that's a big deal. But so she would be like, yeah, that's right. Her spirit's laughing at us right now. So I'm in this restaurant, I'm working, and he helps me change my name, which was so fucking cool, because I ended up not being a minor anymore. And suddenly I'm 22 and can go to the bar and can go do whatever I want. And he gave me this immense sense of freedom. And really, that's what a fake ID is. You know, it's like you're suddenly one person and now you get to be another person. Except my ID wasn't fake. It was actually government issued. I took the drive test and everything. Right. Because I think the laws around driver's license are partially to do with me because I did so many drive tests. I passed that shit out like Skittles. You want an ID? You want an ID? You want an ID?
Everybody gets an ID.
Right. You're all 21 now. So he asked me one day, he's like, if you're already having sex, why wouldn't you want to get paid? And I was like, what the fuck? You can make money from that? Like, I've been giving this shit away for how long? Like, why do I go to work? Like, it didn't make any sense. You know, I was waitressing for like $2 an hour plus tips. A good day, like this is early 90s, mid 90s. A good day would have been like $60-$80. You know, dudes drinking coffee and leaving 2 quarters next to their cup. And I'm like, you mean someone's going to play me for a blowjob? And I can do that shit really well because I've been doing it since I was like 5. Oh so I'm like, you can get paid? Yes. And so that very first trick, I went out to the street and he turned into my pimp. And this was how that happened. So I went out to the street the first time and there was an old hoe that he put me out there with. And it took it felt like 3 seconds to be picked up. It was probably just a couple minutes. And this first guy picks me up. He pays me $50 for a blowjob. And I was like, this is fucking epic because I just made $50 in like a minute and a half. And I'm like, are you fucking serious? This is real. And as I'm getting out of his truck, he grabbed the back of my purse and we start fighting over it. And he steps on the gas. I get I get ran over and I'm laying on the cement. I have my purse, although it's broken, the fucker. And I'm looking at these diamond imprints on the front of my leg. And I'm like, this probably isn't safe.
You're like, well, that just happened.
Right. And I get in the back of that dude's car and my friend that got me the license, my pimp, and he asked for the money. And I didn't even think about it. Like the whole thing probably lasted 15 minutes from going out to the street to climbing in his car. Didn't even think, yeah, that's a red flag or anything else because like,
well, he's been your friend. He supported you. He's loved you.
Right.
Giving you all of this education essentially, right? So.
Right, exactly. Like education and care and love and companionship. And then he wasn't as centric on sex. And so that it felt really safe. And it also helped that he was like 25 years older than me and I had daddy issues. And so like all those things come into play. And when I gave him the money, that was when everything changed. And he started moving me city to city fast. My mom hired private investigators to try to find me. I was like living a full on like cesspool of fast money and crazy tracks. And I worked everywhere. I worked the street. I worked the hotels. I worked escort services. I worked every club. I just worked morning, noon, and night every day. And it was insane. Like I get, this is where slavery gives you one hell of a work ethic. Yeah, I really had to work to get that because like I just got so accustomed to just hustling my ass off every day so someone else wouldn't get killed or hurt.
Well, you're with blinders on too, right? Like you put your head down, you have these blinders on, you have these expectations placed upon you, and you begin to, again, you begin to shape your entire existence all for the hustle. And at the same time, what people I hope are understanding is that you are keeping none of this money essentially at this point for yourself, right? Like this is all going to him.
Right. Yeah. I had $1,000 a day quota. And if I didn't make it, there was one time where he did kill a girl that I brought in because I didn't make enough money. And that's a different, when you see racism, she was a Black girl and I recruited her because I was a bottom bitch and that's what bottom bitches do. Mm-hmm. And I had recruited her and I didn't make enough money, so he literally beat her to death and got in my face covered in blood. And this is all your fault. Had you made enough money, this wouldn't have happened to her.
Well, and he staged that in order to keep control of you. That's one of the the mind.
I actually think he was losing control at that point. And that was his way, because it was the first time I had never made quota. Because up until then, like I had never fucked off. Like I literally just kind of fucked off that night because I was pissed off. And
was this before
that was how it
was. This before or after you had been kidnapped?
After.
Yeah. And so you and I have had this conversation. Let's dig into that a little bit, because I think it's so important for people to understand that mind control stuff. And so if you wouldn't mind, let's roll back to why you fucked off. Let's roll into why you felt. No, for real. Like, because
it's fun.
It's fun and
crazy.
Oh man, it's such a crazy story. So let's roll into that so people understand, you know, this type of trauma and how it settles in your bones and just the way that it pushes you forward in life.
So this, for the first, I don't know have exact times. Like I've timelined it out. I was trafficked for about 14 to 15 months. I was in Hawaii for this period of time, like at the end. So for the 9 to 10 months before, 8 to 10 months before Hawaii, I was really just sold out to him. And that was how I ended up getting rewarded by going to Hawaii, because like he would move me from one place to another based on how much money, because my 1,000 was my base quota. If I come home with $5,000, if I come home with $10,000, I got special perks. So I would always try to go get as much money as I could. And Hawaii was like, where I get to go work Hawaii because it's me and him against the world. Like we're taking it down. Like think Pretty Woman. Like this is totally the type of thing. I'm going to work a trick. I'm going to make the money where it's me and him. And it's that rebellious fire that I was doing something. I had overcome poverty with his help and was living the life. And I believed it was me and him against the world. And so we're in Hawaii, and I end up going with this one trick. A trick is a buyer. And I end up going with him to like a condo. And as I walked in, 2 other dudes jumped out. And basically 3 of them tackled me. I don't know what happened. I woke up 3 days later, tied up with bungee cords in a closet, naked, bloody. And I just kind of wake up, you know, it's like one eye, other eye, like you're like, what the fuck is going on? Because I'm okay with repressed memories. I clearly don't need them. Whatever happened. And I start shimmying out of the bungees. I can hear that no one's there. And I get out and I run. And it's like 1.5 miles from where I was to where I was staying. And I had no clue at this point how long I had been gone. Because like I just like woke up and I'm like, fuck, I got to get out of here. I'm running home. I could have been gone a day, an hour, a year. I don't fucking know. So I run home and I'm like 16, 17, bloody and naked, broad daylight, running through Waikiki, and nobody fucking stops me. So here is challenge number 1 for the audience. If you see a woman or a man or a person of any size, shape, or color running naked and bloody, would you please help them?
No shit.
Like
who does not interrupt that run to be like, excuse me, ma'am, can I offer you my shirt? How can I be of service to you? A lot of
people, because they're scared to get involved. And so that is the most basic thing. If you see someone who is in true distress, ask how you can help. Give them your shirt. Do something, because the number of times that I have run bloody and naked down the street or just naked down the street and not had anyone fucking help me, I need a campaign on just that alone, please. Like, just help the naked people who are running scared for their life. Because someone saw that shit. So, I get to the 28th floor of the condo that we live in, and it's still naked. And he answers the door, and he literally picked me up like a baby and just cried. And I was like, I had never seen him cry before. I was like, what the fuck? And as he's holding me and rocking me and crying, I'm like, Daddy, what's wrong? You know, he's like, I thought you were dead. And as he's holding me and rocking me, my brain is going 1,000 miles an hour and really processing this. I'm like, okay, he's a pimp. He can't go to the police and be like, hey, my hoe's missing. He went, like, I hadn't shows up there. He already talked to all the other pimps on the island. I wasn't out on the track. I wasn't out there. I wasn't working. And it's a fucking island. Where do you go?
Yeah.
Like, he thought I was dead. And so the fact that I was there, like, he broke down, was happy I was alive, and it made my head go, oh, he can't protect me.
Yes. Immediately.
And that was that was my first, I had two experiences where first I lost trust in him, and that was that one. And then a second where I lost trust in humanity. And that was when he actually sent me up to Canada, up to your neck of the woods to die.
Because that's a great story, and we're going to get into it. But I want to talk about, if you don't mind, if you'll indulge me for the listeners, let's roll into how you, after him having lost your trust, how you started fucking off, which led to his complete branch into insanity, like his branch into insanity. So yeah.
Right. To his detriment, I think he truly did love me.
Yeah.
Like I am special and magnetic and fucking epic in every way. And I always have been. Like that. I have always, I have Asperger's too. So I think that I'm just who I am. And I have this weird quirkiness, and it's totally okay. Like I've been okay with me because I'm just me, and I really don't know any other way to be. So, it broke this trust where I knew I had to do something different. And I started just fucking off more, like, and robbing people more and doing more fucked up things. Like, it was pushing the envelope because I was like, okay, what's next? And I had never, Hawaii is so memorable to me because we were there longer. And that's how the brain works. Like, the instability of moving every week, 2 weeks keeps your brain off kilter. When we were in a place and staying in a place for a little bit longer, I have more memories. And it's because, like, it was more consistent. More consistent allows your brain to come out of that space. And it was really profound. So I, started to wake up, started to be like, fuck this. I'm sick of getting rewarded with the privilege of eating breakfast. Just started drinking more, started fucking off. That was when he ended up killing her. And I don't remember why my mom found us. Because I actually still have my notes from when I have her private investigator notes, and it's really interesting. She was tracking us and using a private investigator to find us. And one of her notes said she had called the property manager that we were renting from. And I had left the week prior, and I told them that my brother was killed in a car accident. That's why we had to break our lease. And I was like, that's fun, because I don't even have a brother.
Yeah.
Like, you just make shit up and keep going. But I think we left because he knew that my mom was getting close. And so we ended up coming back to the mainland. And we started, in California, and worked our way all the way up and ended up landing in Seattle, which is where he had some family there. And so we kind of settled into this stability again. And I think he just knew that he was losing me, and he was holding on, like, with the tightest possible rope. It's like the guy with the mouse, isn't that Green Mile? He's like, you just squeeze it and love it and hold it and squeeze it. That's kind of what he was doing, was he was suffocating me. And it was making me freak out more.
Yeah. And he had switched tactics too. So before it had been, using love as a weapon. And now he had gone straight to intimidation because he could feel that he was losing you, and ultimately killing that girl in front of you was one of those last resort tactics. It was like, listen, I could kill you too if you don't do what I say.
I think he was, in hindsight, I think he was scared of me in some ways. It like at the time, I had no fucking clue. I had no clue how much power I actually had.
Yeah.
But I like what you said, he was scared, which is why he ultimately sent me on Greyhound to Vancouver. So I crossed the international lines, which means, yay, I get another survivor check mark. I am an international
You dip your toes into my side of the pond.
I know. Isn't it fun? Like, I have all the check marks. And like literally I was only up there for a few days. You guys have the best healthcare because some of those hoes out on that strip, they beat the fuck out of me. I got jumped like I've never been jumped before. And it wasn't until I met you that I realized, that like he sent me up there to die. And that was a pretty big wake-up call where it was like, I always wondered why he sent me into such a violent territory, because he really did understand the tracks and the industry and the people. Like,
well, you were sent into my territory, which is where we were able to have the conversation where I was like, holy shit, he sent you up to like Hastings without a pimp, without a track, without any space carved out for you whatsoever. Like, do you know what we did to girls out there? And you were like, yeah, right. Like, my face felt it, all of it. Like, so coming back through the border, thank you for your 3 days of healthcare, because I was unconscious in the hospital for 3 days there too. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about what happened when you got to Vancouver.
Oh, I just went to work. I went to the hotel, found a cabbie, paid him off, went to the track. I worked the track all day, all night, all day, all night, all day. Night, got my ass beat. Ended up in a gutter. Cabbie picked me up.
Well, let's talk about it. Was the girl that jumped you.
Right. I was coming out of a Trix car. So I had just turned him, I opened the door. They literally grabbed me by my head. And all I remember was that first moment from like getting out, head to cement. And I was out. And I'm, again, grateful. I don't need those memories. There's certain things you just don't want to remember. When I woke up in the hospital, the cabbie was still sitting next to me. And my face, both my cheekbones were fractured. My jaw was fractured. My nose was completely flattened. I had fractures all through my skull, chunks of hair missing in the shape of stiletto heels. So I like had 30 giant gouges out of my skull. So I looked like fucking Raggedy Ann and with a flat purple black face. And my pimp was just like, yeah, come home. And so as I was coming through the border, I'll never forget the customs agent, because he had me take my sunglasses off. And I know my energy was just pleading for his help, because it was the only time I can ever remember wanting help. And he literally just looked and spit and said, go. And so I went through the border. And I decided that if I was ever going to figure out a way out, that I would have to do it my damn self. And it took a couple more months, few months. I ended up, I would go to my first trick, working hotels, escort services in Seattle. I would go see my first trick. And by this time, I'm, a seasoned veteran. I know how the shit goes down. And I would get like 1,500 first trick, but I would dole it out to Martin, my pimp, over the day. Like, this dude only had $200. This dude only had 300. And I would just dole it out. And I would be sitting in the law library. And
I love
really,
this part of your story.
it's a fucking crazy, because it's like, again, here's another time where someone is visibly out of place. So many times people are identifying, and these indicators are not like necessarily true. They could be applicable to trafficking indicators, could be applicable to just about anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But when you see something that's like really obvious, like those are the ones that people go, oh, I don't want to get involved. They want to get involved when it's real, like not obvious. But then when it's fucking blatant, they're like, ooh, we don't get involved with that dirty shit. And that's the exact opposite of what actually needs to happen. We need people getting involved with the really ugly shit and just asking better questions, like in general.
And this is when this was that second instance that you were speaking to earlier, which is this is when you lost your faith in humanity.
Yeah. That it was the border going, because all I wanted was someone to help me at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I was clearly, my face was fucking purple and black. I am like the whitest white girl ever. Like I was so visibly beaten. I was like, so like, like I got my ass beat.
Oh,
and they just nothing. And I'm like, fucking serious?
Yeah.
Like, and I'll have you know that I was even taking weed and cigars back through. And so they like didn't even check me for anything. I was like, at least, because at that time, Cubans were not, you couldn't get them here. And it was like, I brought back gifts for my pimp and, maybe they'll catch that shit. No, I was even carrying contraband with a beaten face and they still didn't do anything.
I tell you what, our healthcare is epic. The police during this time were absolute, utter failures because you were facing the Greenpeace River. I think that's what you guys called him, wasn't it?
The Green River Killer.
The Green River Killer. And we had Robert Pickton at this time. And so for those of you listening, we're talking about, this would have been what year was this that you were up here?
96.
Was it 96? Okay. I wasn't trafficked until 98. So, but at the same time, we had lots of killers and I had a similar thing happen. Like the cops would pick you up. Your face is black and blue. You have like broken nose, like smashed out eyes, and they just cut you loose. Like they book you or they make you sit in a cell and then they drop you off somewhere and they cut you loose. Like there was no interest and no help being offered for girls like yourself or like myself at that time. Like I don't even know how many girls went missing during this time, and it's
thousands and thousands and thousands, and because it happened all the time.
Yes,
like for me, this is what it really gets me about the narrative of trafficking is people, they gave it this word trafficking. What we're really talking about is like hoes, whores, sluts, prostitution, sex workers, like all these. There is this massive, the sex industry is a huge fucking industry. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. And you have people that are there. You have this massive spectrum that is based on consent. It's not based on age. It's not based on gender. It's not based on all these other things. It's based on consent. Like on one side, like on your left hand, stretch your arms out wide. On the left side, you have like children locked in cages. Yes, clearly trafficking. And then as you go along this bell curve of a spectrum, with, exploitation and all of these different coercive techniques. And then finally, I would say survival sex is like the peak of the industry. If we're looking at the entire sex industry, I would say most people fall into some kind of survival sex. They're needing to do it because they have a sick child. They have something they have to take care of. Maybe they have some kind of health issues. Like they would choose something else, but really, poverty fucking sucks and selling sex pays money and good fucking money. And so, but then as you continue down this spectrum to the right hand, you have people that like chose sex work and wanted to be in it. And we're like, and that's where we're going in my story, because I ended up, going from being trafficked to the complete opposite side. And sex work was one of the most empowering things that I have ever done in my entire life. So how that played out was I'm sitting in the law library and I'm like figuring out the laws and why they work and why we were able to like advertise. I was really starting to understand business at this point. And so One of the gals that I worked for, she was a sex worker, and she was like, I'm about to go to jail because she had 2 girls arrested for prostitution. If she had 1 more girl arrested, she would be in prison for the rest of her life. And she's like, what are you doing? I see you're getting the money, but yet the buyers are calling back and they're like questioning and it's not going on. I'm like, well, I'm playing with the laws. And she's like, okay, we need to fucking talk. I struck a deal with her. She hid me from my pimp. She helped me escape him. She hid me. Her and I together built one of the largest escort services on the West Coast. And so that was really my bridge into turning businesses around and really understanding business and leadership and systems, like how to design systems that navigate within the law and yet serve the purpose that is needed. And that was, I was still making $30,000 to $50,000 a month and just partying and having the time of my life. Like it was the 90s. I felt so incredibly empowered and strong and proud of myself because not only did I work to save myself, I also had a great job and friends, and we were helping other people get away from their abusive asshole boyfriends or pimps or whatever. Like the problem with exiting is that you can't just, like, Martin had me in $3,000 suits. I'm not going to go to fucking McDonald's and make $7 an hour. You're out of your damn mind. Dollar store shampoo does not cut it. Something is not better than nothing for these golden locks. Like, you better take care of my shit. And so poverty is just as big of an exploiter as people are, if not worse. Like, we need real solutions. And that comes through helping people understand financial literacy and business and investing and how to grow a business, because there's so many of us that also have criminal records. And that makes it even more difficult. Or like me, a fake name. I lived as Joanna Johnston for 4.5 years. So when I ended up pregnant, I was just like, well, if I have a baby under this name, I'm going to be stuck as Joanna forever. Had I actually thought about it, I could have qualified for Medicaid 5 years earlier, but, excuse me. Like I don't know. I ended up going back to Jessica, and just because I didn't want to have a baby under a different name. So that has been one heck of a journey. I ended up meeting my husband. We've been married now 17 years. We have 5 kids together, and it's been more fun and more crazy and more real and more honest than I could ever imagine.
Well, and we're totally going to explore that because Reed's going to come on the podcast as well next week. Reed is going to be, Reed's going to come on, and we're totally going to explore Reed's life and Reed's experience, and then the coming of you two together. But let's not glaze over that, Jess. Like, let's get into what happened when you exited sex work. So where did your life take you? How did you get to where you are today? Because I know it's not been easy. You have been to hell and back several times, and you are just, you're glorious. I just really want to celebrate your journey. So let's get into that.
Right. That trafficking and sex work were actually some of the easier things. If I were to be really fucking honest, like, it's because I didn't have any extra responsibility. It was just me. And that just innately makes it easier because you can just go and do whatever you need to do. So I ended up pregnant, and I was in a mutually domestic violence relationship, which means I would throw a bowl, he would throw a plate, we'd square up and throw down. Like, we were no joke. We were fucked up people having babies or baby. And when she was 2, I ended up, like, I just left the industry, left everything, got clean, and just walked away. I started selling insurance, and I had this huge moment when I was about 21 years old, and I was selling insurance, and I was like, I am going to kill people. My biggest fantasy was to become a serial killer, because there's this part of you that it's like when you have been hunted for so long, you literally just want to become the hunter. You're tired. I just got so tired of being taken advantage of that I really just kind of wanted everyone in the world dead. And like, that seemed like the right thing, because sometimes there is no what we think justice. I've never experienced any form of justice, and death, killing people seemed like the only justice. And so I'm selling insurance to elderly people, and I realize that who I am right then is only going to be magnified by 1,000, in 40, 50 years. That because elderly people are either totally awesome, like best stories, coolest fucking people, or they are complete assholes. There's not a lot of in between. And I realized I was like definitely just going to be killing people if I didn't change my life. So yeah. That was my big vision. And I crawled under my desk and I snot bubble cried. I curled up. I'll never forget it. Gray and black striped sweater under my desk, 280 pounds, just losing my shit, because all I wanted was to be able to look in the mirror and say, Jess, I love you. I care for you. You're important. You matter. And I believe in you. You're beautiful. And I wanted to be able to sleep at night without night terrors, because I had been plagued by night terrors since my dad was killed when I was 10. And that was the beginning of an ever-changing journey. And it was the combination of my experiences with Martin, running business, like understanding business, and then being in a sales environment that really, really helped me, because every time I went to a counselor, they would be like, oh, honey, you're not going to make it. You're not going to be okay. Like there's some things you just can't fix.
Isn't that infuriating?
Yeah, my entire life is built on fuck you, watch me. Like, if you want the moral of my story, it's like, you can't do that. And I'm like, fuck you, watch me. That's all my life has been. And it for the next 20 years, like from 21 until 40, I just experimented. And there is not a lack of fucked up people. And it's beautiful, because fucked up people are like, yeah, I actually want help. And so I just help people. And because I've always been really open with my story, it's just the words have changed. Like, I didn't hear the word trafficking until 2009, but I talked about, like, I did my healing just being a hoe. So it's like the small groups I was in and those kinds of things, people knew I was a hoe. Like that I've always been real. And I think that's another one of the perks was living under the false name and being a Gemini. I just knew that I could be anyone I wanted and it didn't fucking matter. And so I've allowed myself to reinvent myself over and over and over again, because nobody fucking cares. Like, they don't care. If you want to show up with these attributes one day and these other ones a different day and these ones a different day, they don't fucking care. Like, so just pick whoever you want to be. And if you like it, keep it. If you don't, pick a different one. And that's really as simple as identity truly is. But identity shapes everything in our life. So we have to be critically aware of who we are and how we're showing up. But if you don't like it, just make the fucking decision and change it. Like, if you don't like being flaky and inconsistent, so pick a different type of identity. Pick one that's steadfast or loyal, and just start feeding that into your head, and it changes everything. Consistency matters. Baby steps forward. And so I just started helping people, and over time I saw patterns and was able to, like, it just grew. But in myself, I wasn't really believing in myself and putting packages together, because I felt like I was still experimenting. I was still trying to understand humanity. I was still like learning, growing, studying history, reading a few libraries, doing the work. And it wasn't until, we had a really bad run starting about 7 years ago. I lost my nonprofit and consulting agency because of my viewpoint changing from being an evangelical Christian to a harm reduction, human rights perspective because of how survivors became hurt. And if you're curious about that and my advocacy, you can just read my book. It's Everything I Know I Learned from My Pimp. And it goes through how to really help and the depth of trafficking within the US. And it's a really, really powerful. You can just Google it. Everything I Know I Learned from My Pimp. But I ended up losing the nonprofit. Our youngest son became paralyzed. And then a hurricane hit. And we had these really rough 7 years that is just now ending. And it gave me such a different perspective on life again, because it's one thing to go through trauma in your childhood. It's another thing to go through it with a family of 7 and trying to figure out how to navigate really difficult waters and stay married and not kill your partner and like keep raising healthy kids. And I'll be damned if the same things don't work over and over and over. Humanity is remarkably predictable. When you find something, when you find tools that work for you, you just rinse and repeat and do them over and over and over and over again until you start to make a difference. You push through. And it has been really an interesting journey, but also I'm glad 7 years is over. And yet I'm really glad I had it because it gave me a different perspective of life.
I love it. I love everything. I love everything about you.
I love you too.
This is our first like official recorded talk. And so, there's, and normally for those of you listening, normally Jess and I are just like off the cuff, like just cracking jokes and like going batshit crazy on here. And we're really going to encourage you to come find us on Clubhouse to get to the funny.
This is the ups and downs of life, though.
Mm-hmm.
It really is, because life is not all jokes, and it's not all fun and games, and it's not all slit your wrist, and it's not all anything. The true, this is one of the things that I didn't understand. The human experience is filled with lots of different types of emotions and feelings and experiences. And when you can have in my daily existence, when I can have this wide variety, wide variety of feelings, that's how I know that I'm really living within my body, because I am feeling lots of different things.
Exactly. I mean, life is this enmeshment of purpose and identity and peace and trauma and love and character. It's a fucking endurance race, right?
Right.
Nothing is absolute and nothing is consistent. Everything changes. And if you're not changing, then I think you should recognize something's wrong. If you're not growing, there's an issue here. And speaking of growth, I want people to get a little bit of insight before they meet Reed into you and Reed. You guys have just been on this insane journey together. And it's one of my favorite parts about you is just, honestly, it's like the hope that you gave me. I think I was asked this recently in a podcast interview, and they said, what was your biggest fear about coming out, about telling your story? And for me, my biggest fear, because I'd lived in shame and fear for so long that I would be found out for my past, that I built this entire, character and identity that didn't include anybody knowing anything about me previous to being like 19. And so for me, my biggest fear was I would lose out on the possibility of an intimate relationship with somebody. And that was planted. That was a seed that was planted in me by my doctor when I exited from sex trafficking. My doctor was literally like, don't ever tell any man, any husband what you've been through or what you've done, because he won't love you. Like legitimately the doctor. And so, but you, it's so fucked up, but you have taken what that doctor said to me and you just blew that shit all to hell with this incredible relationship that you have with Reed. And even though it's had its ups and downs, challenges at the core,
I have a story for you. You're going to love this.
Love stories.
Okay.
Go.
You have not heard this one yet, so you're really going to love it. Okay. So we had been married. Truth, who is 15, was probably about a year old. So 14 years ago, we'd been married about 3 years. And now I had Reed knew about everything prior to being trafficked. And then he knew about the sex industry work after being trafficked. But those 14 to 15 months, I didn't like the hardcore ruthless prostitution. That's what I called it, because those were the words. Yeah. I did not tell him about that. And so we had been married about 3 years. I had been doing all this really deep healing work. And I knew I was so fucking convicted that I had to tell him. I literally locked myself in the bathroom and went through like 4 water heaters. Like I spent hours in the bathroom just arguing with myself. Don't tell him, don't tell him, don't tell him. And I was just like, fuck it. I put a towel on, came out. I'd clearly been crying for hours, and I call Reed upstairs, and I literally just looked up at him and I just said, I don't know how to tell you this, but I've lied to you. I was a prostitute and I didn't know how to tell you. And he just wrapped his arms around me and he held me so deeply. And he said, I already knew. And I love you. And that is unconditional love. It's a connection as well, because he already knew. He felt, he could tell, but he didn't care because he wanted me. That is really the premise of our entire relationship. We push each other. Iron sharpens iron. We're always healing. Reed has a traumatic childhood as well. But our values, who we are, it's a core. Like we have gone through, when we got married, we were hardcore evangelical Christians. We didn't have sex till we were married. We have fully deconverted together. Like those types of things normally tear people apart. That is what, like my mom died 2 months after I went public with my story in 2009. She was our business partner and she lived with us. Our son being paralyzed with Lyme disease, like a hurricane destroying the entire town right after this. All of these individual circumstances could destroy absolutely any relationship. And it almost did ours so many times. But it was that we've always been deeply committed to the same values. We chose to live our lives differently. We chose to never be silent about the things that hurt us. We chose to raise our children, doing our very best, and also just creating this cultivating curiosity around learning, because neither of us had like traditional education. So we have learned and taught and grown with our children. And like we chase every rabbit trail and we're excited about life. And we ended up having 4 kids rapid fire in 5 years. And yeah, we know how that happens. It's just so much fun. We kept doing it. And we had to figure out how to snippy and cut the valves and all that good stuff, because it took us 6 years to figure out how to have sex that was really on point, because we were so hurt. We were so triggered. We would just we'd start to have sex. We'd end up crying and curling up in a ball and holding one person, then the other. And it was like, there were months where it was like we rarely actually had sex, to completion, because it's like we'd get halfway into it, someone would end up trigger, we would hold each other, and then we would try again another day. And so 6 years of that, 6 years of really working through this intense sexuality and establishing trust. And so as we went through these hardships the last 7 years, I always knew Reed's values. There was some bullshit that I didn't want to tolerate. There were some things I didn't know how to break, but I knew it was not him. It was the trauma speaking from what we had experienced. And once we did figure out how to work through those issues, it's been phenomenal. And that life's a journey. I think so many times we get so black and white, we forget that the beauty really is in the shades of gray. And that no one's perfect. Everyone's fucked up in some way. Find someone who's crazy you can tolerate, and then like be teachable together. I don't ever want to hurt Reed. I am not ever malicious towards him. Sometimes I hurt him. Sometimes I do things that are fucked up. It's not like I'm intentionally trying to jab him. There's a difference between accidental manslaughter and being a serial killer. And if you just scale back the trauma, there's a difference between intentionally jabbing at someone with your words and saying something you don't mean because you weren't thinking.
Yeah.
And even lessening those over time gets easier and easier. And so it's really, our key has been that we're always growing, always learning, always changing. And your perfect fucked up person is out there somewhere.
Well, let's talk about how long have you and Reed been together for now? I'm like, oh, change that subject. How long have you and Reed been together for now?
Excuse me, you got me on that one. Was it last Sunday or the Sunday before? We just had our 17th anniversary. So 17 years we've been married. We only knew each other for 7 months when we got married. So it was quick. Thank you, purity culture. Yeah. And really it was just practical because my mom was my only really living relative and his family hated me. So it was like, why wait? Like, let's just do this and move on with our life. Because within Christianity and the purity culture, it's like everything hinges on this wedding. And we just knew. And so we were just like, let's do it. And ironically enough, the week we got married, I was moving to be closer to him. We decided to get married 3 days later. So we were already engaged, but it was like, okay, let's pick a date. And it was like either wait 6 months or do it in 3 days. And so Reed planned the wedding. Reed did the entire thing. I literally just went to the mall and found a prom dress and he planned everything else. And I had to restart my business. So literally the week of our wedding, I had moved, so I had to restart my house cleaning business. And that's what I was doing while he was planning our wedding. So we have always had weird roles in our family. And like, we just shift around and ebb and flow. It's like Rocky and Adrian. You got gaps and I got gaps. Together we fill the gaps.
Let's talk, I know we don't have that much time left here because we have a hard stop at 9 a.m. But let's talk a little bit about this most recent breakthrough that you guys just had, because I feel like it's such an important topic to discuss, and which is codependency and mindset, and also in correlation with your 17th anniversary, right? Because again, we're all just learning together all the time. So why don't you dip into that a little bit?
It was so weird. So you can be aware of a problem and not know how to fix it. I feel like that's a really important distinction. Like, I had the awareness that I was like bitter towards Reed. I was angry because things didn't go the way they were supposed to go. There were promises that were broken, expectations weren't met, and it was on both sides. But I was bitter. That's the nature of it. And he had his own issues and he can talk about those. But for the last 2 years, so we went through that really hard season where we lost everything. And people died when the nonprofit fell apart. It was really hard and really hurtful. One of my closest friends committed suicide. And it was ugly. And then our son being sick and ending up with $3.2 million in medical bills. And then the hurricane, we found ourselves living in tents on the Gulf Coast. Like, it was so bad. But we had this moment where we had decided that neither of us could be whole. Like, we were both so fucked up and so hurt and so broken that we chose to lean on each other just to survive. And it was like, if I'm 50% and you're 50%, let's get through this together. And we did. We leaned on each other for a number of years in that way. Like, we chose codependency because we needed it to survive. We didn't know, like, you can only experience so much pain without losing your mind. And there's not a doubt in my mind that codependency saved my life.
Yeah.
The problem was coming out the other side, not knowing how to get rid of that. And so for the last couple of years, I had been struggling with knowing I had a victim mindset, and it's pockets. It's never like all or nothing typically, unless you've been rescued, in which case that's a whole different fucking ballgame.
The conversation for another podcast.
Right, exactly. But it was like I had these pockets where I knew I was bitter. I knew I was angry. I didn't know how to get past it. And it was really, I had so many breakthroughs all the way through, but the one that happened most recently, I was talking with you on the phone, and it was, you were just like, you need to be grateful for that codependence. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like that. And it's always funny when there's one line that changes everything. And that's typically how it happens with me, is I was just like, I have to be grateful. I need to be grateful for that time, because without that, I wouldn't have made it. And it was like all the little bits of residual shame that I'd been beating my head against the wall, trying to figure out what was I missing? Where was the element that I was missing in my healing journey to just release that bitterness, to be done with that, to be able to say, yeah, I'm 100%, I'm standing on my own feet, and I have my best friend beside me. And I knew that was the goal. Didn't quite know how to get there. So it was like very real. I'm here. I know it. I feel fucked up. I'm still angry. It doesn't come out most of the time, but sometimes it does. I need to figure this out. And so that happened. And oh my goodness, it has been a different world. And I don't feel that same shame, because when people look, we've lived a really weird life, and it has been extraordinarily difficult. And I need to be kind to myself, and I need to be kind to Reed, and together we're better. And it really just comes down to that. We're just better together. And so I don't want to be angry at him, because I like him.
It just makes my little heart just swell. Straight up for you guys. I just love you both so fucking much. It's just, I remember having I love you. And yeah. And I remember you saying, like, I need to break out of this. I need to break this. And yeah. And I love hearing that you've made this shift. Rather than wanting to break something, you're actually moving into alignment with the gift that it really was, and finding that gratitude in it, and allowing it to be released now that you've recognized it for what it was, which is that you guys were busy saving each other, and
and that we really needed to.
Yes.
Because when you have 5 kids, it requires a team. It is not like, I don't know how single moms do it. And like, it's also that we homeschool, so the kids are with us all the time. And so I don't know how one person could do it. Like, it's incredibly difficult. And we do have kids with special needs, so that adds to it as well. But I don't know. Maybe it's because I have special needs. I fucking need a team.
I think,
but to me, it totally was. See, for me, so many things are it's not volatile, but it does feel like it was like one of the biggest breakthroughs I've had. I don't know why. I'm suddenly analyzing why breaking things. And I did need to break it. That was very, very significant for me to be able to break that pattern, break that thought process. You know what? It's because it's final. When I make a decision, I don't go back, like ever. Like it's when my decision-making skills are massive strong. So when I make a decision, it's like it is broken. It is done. I will not go back to that. But I also know, like for 2 years, I had been having these mini breakthroughs to get to this one. Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. Totally speaking my language.
Yeah, I think society in general, we have not been trained how to make decisions. And I'm grateful for my Pimp because I learned how to make decisions like my life fucking depends on it. And because of that, it's part of what makes me a great entrepreneur is that I can make decisions and stand behind them no matter what.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that because obviously, I mean, you and I discussed this before we hit record, but, one of the main takeaways I want people to get from each and every episode is actionable steps, things that, might help contribute to their own joy and happiness and advancement. And so let's talk about everything you learned from your Pimp book. Let's go there.
Okay. Boy, the book is real, true, actionable steps because what I discovered the subtitle is Surviving Trafficking and the Anti-Trafficking Movement. Because my story is just one part of it. Working with hundreds and hundreds of survivors and hearing survivors, what I really understood was most people don't understand the depth or complexity of this issue. And I had this beautiful perspective where I was able to just listen to hundreds and hundreds of stories from trafficking survivors. Because I was so vulnerable with my story, people felt safe. They come to me, they share with me. And so I feel like I was privy to this information that not a lot of people get. Like I couldn't have done it if I were writing a research paper. No one would have shared with me their stories in the same way. And so because I had this established trust, I was able to really see things differently and understand where I had preconceived ideas about how to help people who were trafficked, and I was wrong. And that also allows me to be compassionate to people who are doing shit that's really fucked up now, in my opinion. But it's like, no, you're doing it wrong, but I'm not mad at you for doing it wrong because I did it wrong too.
Right.
So let's learn from this. Let's grow. And rescue is one of those examples that we talk about a lot because in essence, rescuing really just takes the power from the trafficker, bypasses the survivor and places it into the hands of the rescuer. And really what a person needs in order to be empowered and strong and go through that journey of healing that's on the other side, because the relocation is really just one day. They need that power. And so I go into the depth within the book as to how I came to these conclusions and different examples. So it's really fun. It's really for those who want to help, but understand that all change comes from the inside. And what's in the book actually changed all of my parenting. It changed my marriage. It changed every relationship in my life. It's the reason I am today, because people are remarkably the same, and we have been for millennia. And healing and relationships and tragedy, it's really pretty common, very common. And we all need it. And so it was a fun book to write. It's fiction, nonfiction, but really designed for people who just want to help. So, and the ebook's only $7. You can only find it on my website. So just give it a Google. Everything I know I learned from my pimp.
I love it. I love the book too. And especially, I put it on if I'm going to go, if I'm just sitting at home, because you actually have your own version of Audible for it, where you read it to the listener. Yes.
I had fun with that. There's a video book too, which is wild, because I was like, if I'm going to read this for audio, like, it's a tough subject. Mm-hmm. So it's easier if you can see my face, and, it takes some of the edge off.
Yes. And then you also have Burnt Consulting. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Really, my consulting company is, just how I help. Like, I fix and help people with complex people problems. And I work at the intersections of business, relationship, addiction. Because normally when there's a problem, it doesn't just impact, like your business is falling apart, but your family's great. Mm-hmm. Like, normally it's the combination of, like, business is falling apart, marriage is falling apart, children aren't getting the care they need, so they're falling apart. And, it's just easier to drink too much or pop some pills, something like that. And that's normally been going on for a while. So as part of my consulting, that I work with complex people problems at the intersections of all things money, relationships, sex, parenting, and that is a blast. But what I'm actually launching into is really doing more program development, program writing, which I have done under my consulting company for many years. But I didn't... that was part of something that happened when I turned 40, because I had always written programs and curriculums. I co-wrote the program that helped reform foster care in Connecticut. I've piloted residential programs for specifically trafficking survivors that have phenomenal results. But I always gave them to I would sell it and then not ever publish it myself. But I kept the rights to everything I've written. And so the last couple years have been really putting together, like, my journey for the next 40 years, because I feel like I did a lot of experimenting to start this life out. And the older I get, I realize the less I know. But what I do know, I know really fucking well. And that needs to be taught. And so that's why I published my book last year. I ended up publishing a program that helps coaches, consultants, like one-on-one helpers, write their business plans. And it's just so fun because it's no bullshit. The marketing, online marketing and business is a whole nother weird niche that is full of scams and crazy people and bullshit marketing. And I quite love that arena as well. So I bypass all of that with kind of infusing my story and no bullshit business together into one. So if you like my personality and you have a business, like, definitely get in touch.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Jes, this has just been a magical fucking experience. Every time we play, it's amazing. I love you so fucking much. And also, where can they find you on Clubhouse, Instagram, Facebook? Because we want to more.
Yay! I am Sassy Jes everywhere, but it's spelled wrong. It's SASYJES, just like yes, 3 letters. Yeah, that's a funny story in and of itself. I did that branding back in like 09. 08, 09, somewhere in there. When I first got on Facebook, I was like, yep, this is my new name. And it has, I think it is the core me, a little bit sassy and a little bit smart-assy and a whole lot of fun. So SASYJES on all platforms. And we have a blast on Clubhouse. Come find us. We have a good time.
Yes, we have epic times. And
I love you. And that's what I needed to say right there. Oh. I adore you. It has been so much fun getting to know you, hanging out, like really learning and growing from each other. And that is, it's fun to have a friend in it.
It is. And community. I mean, community is everything, you know, as we're building and creating this and just holding space for other people to come into so they can share, not just in the, you know, not just in the sadness and not in, you know, the trauma, which of course we also include that. But again, I mean, I think one of the best things about our friendship is being able to laugh at the most fucked up, traumatic shit. It just allows us to find some balance for it. And I couldn't be more grateful to have a partner that laughs with me through all of the messed up shit, because so important.
It's fun. Because we laughed about it. Like, I laughed about it when I was in it. And if I can laugh about it while I'm in it, I sure as hell can figure out how to laugh about it when I'm on the outside. Like,
well, yes. And that's, oh my gosh. I think that was like, again, that was also one of my biggest fears is when I was writing my book. And I mean, I include the laughter in it because, you know, that's what sets the pace. That's what allows you to survive it. And it was just like, I think I was scared to let people see that side of the morbid humor, you know, and to see, like, to allow people to see that deeply into you. And yet at the same time, it's, you know, it's what allowed me to connect with you was the way that you embraced your trauma, the way that you embraced the morbid humor of it all. And I was just like, it just made me love you that much more. And so you've instilled this confidence in me that, I was just like, I just don't want to do life without you, babe.
Oh, I just love you. This is so fun. And morbid humor is the best. I cannot wait for you to actually sit and meet the whole family because you will laugh. Our kids have the same, like, we've been open and honest with them. Like, they don't know all the graphic details when they're young, but they do know, like, we talk in front of them, and like our youngest is 10. They're 10, 12, 14, 15, and 20. And they have the wittiest humor. Like, it is unreal how it's the same thing. And it's so fun how they see the world differently. But that humor has been cultivated so much because we just gave our kids freedom to think differently. And when you think differently, you see things differently. And my kids weren't raised, they don't have the same mindset issues that I had or have. And so they'll pop off with something and it's just like, oh. And that, it's always just this one line that changes everything. That's why I call it a breakthrough, because it's like, it's one way one time and then it switches and it's suddenly something different. And when you have those moments, those are keys because you got to own that shit.
Yes.
Own it and run and just keep going. And I adore you. So thank you so much for having me on. And I look forward to listening to Reed's episode because he's a hoot as well. And make sure you make him sing.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Get him singing because he's a songbird.
I tell you what. Sure. I had a vision the other day and it was because we're going to have a survivor summit. I mean, there's just no doubt in my mind. We're all going to get together. There is a group of us that get together on Clubhouse and it's fucking epic. The diversity, the inclusiveness, the mindsets, the experiences. I mean, every single one of you guys, I just feel so complete when we're all together and we're going to have a summit. And I had this vision and we were all singing around a campfire and we were all together and it was like some real kumbaya shit. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
That's awesome.
It's going to be all of us. So I cannot wait to get down there to you because you're in Vegas and you know what? Fuck yeah. We're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
So, okay. It has been a blast.
It's awesome.
We're going to get off this and we're probably going to jump into Clubhouse and keep up the conversation.
Right?
Yes. I love you so much, Jes.
I love you.
And we're going to have you back again soon. Mwah.
Absolutely.
Bye, babe.
Mwah. Bye.
Disclaimer. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not necessarily reflect the opinions or viewpoints of the host, producer, other guests, or sponsors. I, Rayanne K. Irving, am not, nor have I ever been, a doctor or therapist, and none of what I say is intended for professional or medical advice.